my God, it's good to be back.
I know, girl.
What a icky romp through the swamp of sadness I've had.
I know. And I'm happy that you're here to tell us all about it.
Well, I mean, nobody really wants to hear about that, but I will say.
Well, the revelations that you have gleaned from this experience of your slug. What is it? Slog. Yeah, your slog through the swamp of sadness.
I also am slugged through it. It felt like.
Yeah.
Was a slug. Felt like slugging some people. It applies in a lot of ways. Yeah.
So to continue our conversation that we've already been having since like an hour ago.
Yeah.
What you want to talk about, girl?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it kind of feels like my pattern recognition lately, and I don't know if I'm alone in this, is feeling a little bit more like we're on the Titanic a little bit, maybe a little bit, kind of.
Yeah.
And I was playing with this idea because the Titanic, the movie, has, it's Leonardo DiCaprio and like whatever.
Oh my gosh, you know what I just realized?
What?
My first ever viewing of the Titanic was on Valentine's Day, which is today.
Oh, wow.
I guess 1997. Is that when it came out? Yeah, I think so.
You remember better than me.
Yeah,
but
girl.
yeah, I know it was 90s, but.
Because I remember thinking to myself, because I was in a relatively new relationship.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself that when Rose dies and ends up back in the Titanic.
Yeah.
And she like reunites with all of these people or whatever. And, she sees Jack. And I was just like, bitch, you had a whole ass husband. Where is he? I was like, you had kids and everything, but you just trying to come back to see this man that you boned in a car and you knew for 20 minutes. Like, that's a weird afterlife story. But I then read such a good point. I then read something ages later. I mean, decades later, because I think I read this within the last year or something, that it was like for her to have told their stories and then for her to have like thrown the heart of the ocean back into the ocean as sort of like a grave marker almost to like commemorate the loss of life and to honor them.
Yes.
That was why she ended up there and that's why they clapped, because they were like, thank you for telling our story.
Remembering us.
And thank you for
telling
remembering.
The truth.
Yes. And So then it made more sense. But like at the time, I was like,
you were like, this is your afterlife with these people?
I was like, bitch, you a skunk.
Leo
was
cute.
romantic and stuff. Yeah, and he was cute, but like, what happened to your husband?
Anyway, being like alive while 40-something Leonardo DiCaprio is alive as well just reminds me that men ain't shit. Like, look at that man. He ain't shit. I used to just be like every other girl dreaming about getting married to one of the new kids on the block, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? Probably the gay one, because it's definitely the gay one that I wanted to marry. But, all these men now in their 40s and, late 40s, early 50s, I mean, they just look like every other middle-aged white man.
Shall do. But they have money, so they date 20-year-olds. That's the only difference.
Well, maybe they have money, maybe they don't have money.
Which
I can't imagine
that has never made sense to me either, because like having been a 20-year-old woman.
Right.
Why?
Why what?
Why do you want to, if you're middle-aged, which I am now,
right?
Why would you want to like spend time with a 20-year-old? The conversation can't be great.
Well, the conversation is, you're so awesome. You're the only person who gets me. You like totally are so strong and like you know what I mean? Like that's what we see when we date these men.
And then the guy's like, you're so fucking hot.
Exactly. And then and so that's really what it is. It's just a one-sided conversation, like most relationships. We're just having a one-sided conversation with each other, in each other's company. And what an honor it is, honestly, because we are creating our own world. So I'm happy to create my own world here with you, even though, in many ways it's always a one-sided conversation, because we can't ever know where people are really coming from.
Right.
Because we all have we're all obviously human beings. And I think everyone who's listening to this is a human being.
But shout out to the dog fans.
Yes. Anybody, you know what? Da Vinci at home.
Yes, my baby.
I just want to shout out to Da Vinci. Shout out to Tuna, my dog. If you're listening to this, because I put on my podcasts on the speaker, and I just want you to know that I love you and you're important.
And Da Vinci, I just want to say, who's your good boy?
He's a good boy.
He's a sweet baby.
I love him so much. He's such a good baby. And you know what? I feel like if we could relate to one another more on the level of, you're such a good boy.
Yeah.
You're really trying. I see that. I think that life would be at least more peaceful and more fun.
So who are you on the Titanic? What did you end up? Where did you end up with that?
Yeah. So my question, like, I think about that. Like, who are we if we are on the Titanic? Are we below decks? Are we, I've always identified with the working class and felt like my ancestors were, and I know many of them were very poor and hard and working class. My great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather came across from Europe on a boat. He was like a baker.
Oh, cool.
But, even still, it's like, that's such a terrible, meaningless reduction of someone's entire life and impact on you.
Well,
but thanks for your genetics.
I know. And my grandma, she's 88, and she was just talking recently, last time I visited her, about like growing up in Germany.
Yeah.
Before, during, and after World War II. And she was telling me a story about how it was somebody's birthday, and they had gone and dropped off their ingredients for the birthday cake at the baker. Oh. And I was like, oh, did y'all like not have an oven or whatever? And she was like, well, no, but like no one did. The baker baked things. And so you just got the ingredients for your, whatever it was, whatever special item you were get, like a birthday cake or something for Christmas or whatever. And you just brought the ingredients over to the baker, and then the baker baked whatever it was that you asked for, and then you just went and picked it up. And I was like, why don't we still do that?
Well, because you can't sell wolf designer
exactly
ovens with red knobs.
Yeah, we just need
for $5,000.
We just need to go back to being in a village. Like,
me too.
I really want some of that, like, Belle at the beginning of the Beauty and the Beast vibes.
Yes.
That's what I want. There goes the baker with his tray like always. We need to have that again,
I'm there.
Yes, girl.
I'm ready to,
well, wait, let's talk about our next big idea.
Okay.
We are going to have circle. I guess it's going to be circle. It's really not even, it's loosely, listen, it might be a rhombus, we don't know.
Right.
But we want to invite our listeners to join us in person in my living room initially.
Yeah.
To tell stories, like to tell our stories, to hear each other's stories, because that is how we get back to, and it's not even, I hate to say going back, because it's not even, it's not a nostalgia for the past. It's like, it's like remembering what sort of was working, understanding why it wasn't continued.
Yeah.
And then in that remembrance, consciously saying, okay, well, we're going to bring that into our lives once again, because it was working for us. And then that is where this comes in, because I was just talking to a friend today about the, I can't think of the word, like the separation of duties, I guess, like in a household. And you've only got like, typically, you've got however many kids you've got, but depending on their ages, they may not be super helpful. Right. So you've got like a mom and a dad, or two moms and two dads, or whatever the thing is. Like you have two adults in your household and then some kids, because that's the way that things are structured, in this patriarchal society that we live in. And it's like, okay, like they both work full-time jobs, but then she has to figure out grocery shopping, meal preparation, childcare, housework, all of that stuff. and this is a conversation that's been had a million times, but it's like, that would be so much easier if she lived with a bunch of other women.
Mm-hmm.
Why? So I'm not asking people to move into my house at this point. I'm just saying, let's come together.
Yeah.
And tell each other our stories. And it doesn't have to be your story, like any story. Like, let's just share stories with each other so that we can start to create with our energy a better way of doing things, because the way things are being done right now it's not great.
No, we're all so isolated.
Yes.
And as someone who really values my ability to hermit and isolate, I still live near family because I know my tendency is not healthy. Ultimately, for me, human beings crave connection. It's not anything to be ashamed of or apologize for. It's the way that we were designed. It's the system that you're in. So why wouldn't we go back to, like, I know we're using that go back to, but Terrence McKenna called it the archaic revival. And the way he explained it was, if you wake up in a culture that is like profoundly sick and you start to recognize the ways in which it's conditioned you to function within it, even though you're starting to recognize that it's sick, the best thing to do, like if you get lost in the woods, he said the analogy would be like, if you got lost, the best thing that you can do is go back to the last place you knew where you were. Mm-hmm. Try to find the last place where you knew where you were. Well, the last place in our culture as humans where we knew where we were in equilibrium as a species and with nature, was in the archaic times where we were little villages and we each had our own thing that we brought to the table, but we were all sharing responsibilities and living in harmony.
Yeah.
So
like all these little ways that, these little sayings, like it takes a village, and what is the other one about the hands? Like
many hands
make light work or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
there's a reason why.
Yeah. I think, why did we... Like that shit worked.
Well, we stopped because, for reasons of like the tough stuff to look at. The thing that we've all been a part of against our will.
I think it's just greed. I think it's just greed. And I think it's just
for sure it's greed.
Overblown, because it's like, how many piles of money does one person need to sit on?
Right.
When other people are struggling.
Right.
And it's so stupid. And like, when you said, who would you be on the Titanic? The first thing that popped into my head was that SNL sketch where it was like, they're like, okay, first class passengers, women and children or whatever. And then they're like, second class. And then they're like, chandeliers. And then they're like, deck chairs. And like the third class passengers are like, what did...
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I see. It's like the ship is sinking. And so like, let's save as much of our stuff as we possibly can. Like, nobody wants to talk about anybody doing anything, anybody spending their resources differently or allocating them differently, because you know what, like capitalism and like this mine, like don't come for my shit.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't think that's the way that most people are looking at it at this stage. But yeah, like when you said, who would you be on the Titanic? I was like, hopefully a deck chair, because that bitch got off. And the third class passengers did not.
You made yourself an inanimate object. I love it. You were like, well,
just carry my inanimate ass off this ship because it's going down.
Oh my God. And I was thinking, like, the deck chairs, it's so sad because every time I watch it, I feel like I'm putting myself through this big sort of analysis of society at large, because it really feels so analogous to what we're going through. It's like this slow moving crash that we all see,
that everybody sees coming. I know. It's like we're in it. It's definitely, there's a bunch of holes poked in the side of our ship / country. It's definitely sinking.
It's definitely sinking. And part of me wants to believe, like, the first thought that I had in my head was, and this is how I like to pump myself up in my mind. You'll see. I was like, oh no, I'm that old white dude who had like the top hat and came down in his coat and he was like, I'm going to take a brandy and then I'll just sit in this chair and watch the whole ship come fucking crashing on in at me. But then I was like, no, because I really do have Rose energy as well. Like I'm trying to fight this.
I don't know. And see, like, and I do have a lot of fight energy, but do you know who I thought was like, I had such an emotional reaction to in the movie was the old couple who realized like, oh yeah, we're definitely going down. And then they just went and got in bed. Cause like they were like, at least we're together. And, I just watched The Notebook over the weekend cause it was recommended, for Valentine's Day and shit.
Right.
And I watched it and I was like, dude, that's the way to go, man. Just be like, we mutually agree that this is not a great scenario for us. So we're just going to beam out. God, what would it be like if people had the ability to fucking beam out?
Yeah.
There'd be like 7 people.
There would be like 7 people here. It would be only the billionaires.
It would be only, that's what I was just thinking. Yeah. It would be only the billionaires and the rest of us would be like,
Yeah, no, I'm good.
On to the next thing.
Yeah, I can see that this game is rigged against me, so I'm going to peace out. I mean, that's definitely, I think it's important to just be honest about, that's a completely rational calculation to make nowadays. I'm not suggesting it. Obviously, I'm just a person who also deals with those types of thoughts. And I had to befriend, I call her Suicidal Summer.
Does she live in the swamp of sadness?
She does live in the swamp of sadness. Suicidal Summer lives in the swamp of sadness. There's my ASMR contribution.
Hells yeah.
Yeah. And I sort of had to reckon with it because a couple of years ago, January 2022, I want to say, that was the beginning of my like 8 months of traveling. And I was on the beach with some loose acquaintances in northern part of California. And it was this transcendent and beautiful experience. And I just realized like, oh, I'm so sad. Like I'm so sad. And being in a beautiful place will help you realize that you're sad.
Yes.
Because it's like, oh, if this can't cheer me up, if this can't fix that, then I really I have to spend some time with myself and figure out what's going on. and of course that's what I have been doing, getting to know that sad part of me. But the truce I made with myself that day was to always keep Suicidal Summer's voice in my head. I just want to normalize that it's a part of being human. And if you have these feelings, I just cannot buy into the shame about it. So I'm just going to ignore it completely because it's stupid.
Yeah.
But I told myself that day, I'm going to listen to her. I'm going to listen to you whenever you got something to say, Suicidal Summer, because you are trying to keep this thing afloat. Actually, you're the one who wants this to work, and you're the one who's coming to tell me things aren't working.
Right.
And you're the last stop, there's nothing beyond that.
That's what I feel like we're moving toward, is just like, we all have these pieces of ourselves, whether they're like protector parts,
right,
or they're us.
Yeah.
They're just all these different voices. And like I feel like with the way that things were, where the focus was on doing and not being, it was like, oh, here are 27 things that you can do every morning between the hours of 4 and 5 a.m. to shut that shit the fuck up. So that only you just beat those bitches into submission with all your positive bullshit. Yep. And then you can go on about your day and feel good about yourself because you have, basically disconnected from anything in your head or heart,
right,
or life that's not really positive. And when I say positive, I mean like
toxically.
Yes, like go get them, girl.
Well, part of what I realized on my journey too is that if I were to be judged for how I treated my inner child, for example, if my inner child was a real child, I would have been hauled in for abuse.
Yes.
And that shit's not okay. And I had to take accountability for that. Like, okay, I've done this to myself. Yes. I've allowed this conditioning, not in a way to like prolong the shame, but just to acknowledge, to take personal responsibility, radical honesty.
Yes.
This is true. I allowed people to take advantage of me And once I realized what was happening, I now was empowered to make a different choice. It might not be a right away choice, but it's a changing your mind towards a different outcome and making slow changes towards it.
Yes, because when people use lingo like reparenting oneself, and it feels like, what the fuck does that even mean? This is what it means. And it doesn't have to be some elaborate thing. You don't need a class for it. You catch when you're speaking to yourself like you would beat the fuck out of somebody for speaking to your child that way. Right. And then you say, okay, I am the child in this scenario, and I'm gonna treat myself as if I deserve love and compassion and respect because I do.
Right.
And if the way that I have to do that is to remember, like, I don't speak to anybody that way, so why would I speak to myself that way? Like, that's just, it's catching it. And then just repeating that pattern and doing it over and over. Practice. And I had texted you yesterday about how I was having a conversation with my daughter, who's a senior in college, and how she just offhandedly, in talking about her friends and her sorority sisters and stuff. And she just was like, oh yeah, like I'm the crier in the group. I get so emotional and I just cry. And I was just like, dude, like that's fucking amazing. Yeah. You can just express your emotions that way, because like I told you, like that would be my last resort ever.
You were so tough. Like when we were in school, I feel like, who's the woman from Greece? Like in Greece, like who was the tough one from the Pinkies or whatever? Oh
yeah, I know. Well, I know who you're talking about. But
Rizzo. You were Rizzo, and I was like ditzy little like
Sandy.
Not even Sandy. Like who was the other one who was like the bubble gum and like blowing bubble gum, like the side character? Anyway, I always feel like such a goofball, bouncing, bebopping around, badoop, 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 And then you were like, you could have lit anybody's ass on fire.
Yeah, and I think it is too, because the emotion that's the easiest for, and this is just a theory, I think that the emotion that's easiest for us to feel, the emotion that's easiest for us to embody, the emotion that's easiest for us to be like, that makes us the most comfortable, is the one that we're going to default to.
Yes.
And mine was probably like anger
and just like eviscerating people verbally, because you were so good at verbalizing.
Yeah. And it was, and you're so smart. And that's where I always like, and it took like, I think that is a superpower. Yeah. I think all of the range of emotions that we can connect with are our superpowers, but like, you can't like, then if that's all I had, and it was for a long time, then you're just a one trick pony. Yep. And it's like, oh, well, we'll call her when we need somebody to come and fucking scorch earth this situation.
It's so great too, because this feeds right into how I'm realizing things about myself too, because my default was to roll over and show my belly. Well, guess what? Some people fucking attack you when you show your belly.
Yeah.
And I had to learn this. We can talk now about like how I'm learning about boundaries, and how even though I came into this world as my default wanting to roll over and show my belly, I was drawn to you because you knew how to protect your boundaries, or to protect yourself or stand up for yourself. I didn't have that skill. Yeah. So I was aligning with you because I saw you had something that I wanted to emulate in myself.
And I think that is why this whole like village concept feels so amazing, and I feel so drawn to it, because like we've been plucked out of our scenarios, whatever those may be.
Yeah.
And then society tells us, like now you create your own household, and like you share responsibility with a partner, whatever that looks like, and you take care of your own household. And like these households have gotten extravagant, dude. Like, and then I'm like, I mean, a mud hut sounds grounding to me.
Amen.
Just me and some chicks in a mud hut.
Literally. This is the thing I never could understand is how are you going to talk down on basically living with nature when like you love going, like people love going camping and hunting. Like that's all we're talking about, is just being closer to nature, being more integrated with nature in our place, and, just vibing and feeding ourselves and caring for each other and having projects, of course, making art, doing industry even, but just like on a scale that is not harming literally the world.
Yes.
Literally the world.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. But
I do feel too, just so it's not all like gloom and doom and we're on the sinking Titanic, like I often feel like I'm in the midst of some sort of like drama action film where it's like, what's gonna happen next?
right.
You know, like some shit happens and then you're like, oh my God.
Right.
Plot twist. How they gonna get out of this one? And then it's like, you can almost forget that how are you gonna get out of this one? But
It's
still,
truth.
it's like, it is, I've not lost the feeling of being in love with this whole thing.
No,
like,
I'm
that's
so
the
glad
part
you said that.
Yeah, that's
because
the part
exactly
that is
right.
You're like on this roller coaster, you know,
Yes,
and then you're
it
like, this
is.
is so cool. Like that part of life is so invigorating, and just being like, you're in this
It's
whole
amazing.
thing, and you don't even know how it's gonna end.
Yeah.
Like you don't even know what's up. You know, you don't even know when your part's over.
Well, I think
But like you just keep being in it, and you're just like, what's gonna happen?
I love that. And it's a good point because yes, there's the Titanic, but there's after the Titanic too.
Mhm.
And in my worldview is that we're consciousness. And so we're eternal.
Yeah.
So this ego that I've constructed that's called Summer, she cute. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, she cute.
She's so cute. You know what I mean? Don't call me. She, is gonna die.
Yeah.
Of course we're going to die.
Yeah.
Of course, guys. I mean, this is the thing. It's like we have to face it because there's something that's going on in our culture right now. It's like under the surface where we really are, I think, as a culture, investing in this idea that we're going to live forever because we're going to like upload our consciousness or something, or they're going to come out with some medical advancements that are going to like regenerate your friggin' telomeres or some shit like that.
And like that's cool.
Maybe,
and
but
it's probably it might and that's
everybody.
That is the whole thing.
Not for everybody.
Because I literally thought as I sat in my, I don't know, 3rd grade library playing Oregon Trail on this big ass box of a computer, that by the time I was this age right now, we would have flying cars.
Right.
That's what everybody said.
Yeah.
It is 2024. My shit still has wheels on the ground. And like, I'm like,
because of that big tire lobby girl.
Yeah, girl. See, and that is the whole thing. And also, you know what else I just thought of? Another Titanic reference. So like I told you like whenever after I had finished watching this, however the fuck long it is, 4-hour movie on Valentine's Day. And I still had to go home and cook after that. And I was making roasted Cornish game hens. So like we didn't even eat dinner till like 10 p.m. on that. Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah. That's what happens when your girlfriend is 19 and she don't know how long food takes to cook.
Well, live and learn.
But anyway, so that was what I had said was like, I can't believe she got like a husband and kids and grandkids. Yes. I mean, this woman taking care of her done dragged her ass all out into the ocean and she wasn't there in the, finale or whatever. Yeah. So that was what I was thinking. Mm-hmm. What Ralph said, which actually is smart, I think, now that I think about it. He said, why didn't they just throw it into reverse and all get off on that iceberg, that big fucking iceberg they hit? And then by the time the Carpathia came along, they would have just been a bunch of people on an iceberg. They wouldn't have frozen to death probably because, you freeze to death in the water. You're fully immersed in it. But like if you get enough people together to like
on an ice cube,
on an iceberg,
no,
they might have made it.
They just slid right off. What you talking about?
Saying, like this is our Earth, and like maybe we don't all need to be where we are.
Plus, they couldn't turn that thing around.
No, they would have just backed it up. Oh, you can't do that in a boat.
Flip that thing into reverse.
We might need to edit that part.
Send it right on back to the iceberg that we just hit so we can all get off.
Oh my God. Listen, I'm not an engineer. Oh my
God. Now I know what the first AI generated graphic is going to be.
The Titanic backing up.
That's it. With everybody.
Back it up.
With all them thousands of people. Huddled.
I realize now.
With frozen feet to the top of the iceberg.
I realize now that you cannot just throw it into reverse in the water.
I appreciate you for that visual. Thank you. That was really good.
You were like, how are they going to turn around? Bitch, you just throw it in reverse. Or they should have had jet skis for all.
Oh, yeah, jet skis. Oh, God.
Yeah.
I know. Well, so the thing is, yes, of course, we're gonna leave this physical form. It's gonna go away, but we've always been, and we always will be. So we're gonna change form, just like when we were a baby, we weren't who we are now. Because we've constructed an ego of how we navigate the world, and that's how we perceive ourselves. But separate from that role, we still exist. So it's important to know, to remember, because if we don't keep our death in mind, we will waste time on things that we actually don't want to invest in, because our time is finite in this form.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. This form, this view, this perspective is finite.
Yeah.
That's why it's precious. It has to perish, because otherwise it's monstrous. Something that only grows is monstrous.
Yeah.
So we have to restart, we learn that way.
Yeah. And I feel like our souls are just infinite, and they just have always been and will always be, but it's the ego part that that changes up the game every time.
Exactly.
And how that develops and all of that piece, know, that's the big experiment, that we're all just like experiencing ourselves in the other and in our own ego stories and narratives and stuff. And so like, that's really cool too.
It is really cool. And I mean, I think it's probably why we do this, because it is so fun to be over there looking out of your eyes once, and then be over here looking out of my eyes at you, and then what does that, how does that change things? What does that look like? Next time I'm going to be the microphone, the time after that, I'm going to be the Diet Coke can.
Yeah, I know. And I really do think that, because remember I was talking to you about trees and how I used to not have any concern about trees, and how I used to say that I was engaged in like an epic battle with nature, and that I would like for everything to be concrete, because like grass is dirty and just was not a fan. Like the only time I spent in nature was like watching it on TV, like Discovery Channel or National Geographic or whatever. Like that was cool.
Yeah.
But like on my couch in the air conditioning, there was
no dirt, no bugs.
Yeah, no dirt, no bugs. And now that I have this widened perspective, like I think about the fact that that tree outside my backyard grew from an acorn and like had this incredible metamorphosis, and then has grown and grown and grown. And it's like, well, that's a living being. And it has like, it's like, I don't know, like they are taking on like characteristics that remind me of personality.
I love it.
And so, yeah. And I do too. And then it's like, then when you think, it's like that I think that part had to be removed somehow from humanity as a whole, in order to allow us to participate in the kind of destruction and waste and greed that we have been forever, for however long we've been doing this. And it's like, wouldn't it be better if the earth was preloaded with all of the stuff that we as human beings needed to survive? I'm not saying that we shouldn't eat animals. I'm not saying that we shouldn't use trees for their lumber or whatever, but like, I just feel like we need to get to a take what you need type space, where it's like, oh, I'm going to build my dwelling out of these trees, and I'm going to honor these trees. I'm going to explain to them what's happening. I'm going to talk to them about it. I'm going to ask them to sacrifice their form to provide shelter for me and for my family. That just seems so intuitive now to think about it that way.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, I'm going to chop down
whatever I want.
You and thousands of your brethren. And then I'm going to have you sit on a shelf at Lowe's for however long. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, there's like, I just feel like if we could just get to the state of acknowledging everything as coming from source.
Yep.
Like you were talking about, like the Diet Coke can and that, like,
it's
so fucking cool.
Yes.
And it always relates back to like, that's why I think the video game example is so cool, because it's like, you don't just get a bunch of shit in a video game so you can fucking sit on your shit.
Right.
You get these tools so that you could like better play the game.
Yes.
And like get to different levels and like unlock certain codes and stuff like that. That's why you collect the things in video games that you get. You don't just be like, you know, well, I'm on level 45 and I have 80,000 gold coins.
Right. Great.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Good. Yeah.
And you're a terrible hang.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Like, what the fuck are you going to do with all those gold coins? Buddy?
Exactly.
Like, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?
And then calling a girl a good gold digger, probably.
Right. I know. Yeah.
But I want to say the thing about, because so I've been estranged from my mother for a couple of years. It's not really a news story or anything, and it's a very common experience when you've both left your religion, when you're a woman from the South and, you know, come out as queer. My mom, and it's even more complicated than that. There's like abuse there, but it was largely rooted in spiritual abuse. And, you know, I love my mom. So anyway, the thing is, because my default mode is to roll over and show my belly, and I genuinely do cultivate love for everything in my life intentionally so that I can have a better experience of living. Since I've already met Suicidal Summer and she was like, that ain't it. Don't keep going down this path, bitch. Because I'm telling you what, I'm going to call it off. I'm going to call it all the fuck off.
Yeah.
So now I listen to her. So when she says, I go, okay, well, you know, I can't go down that path. I need to turn around or, you know, adjust my course. So anyway, my mother, and we're estranged, but she lives in the same town. This was part of the reason why I was really not looking forward to moving back home, because I just anticipated a lot more run-ins than luckily have happened. But I had a run-in where she showed up where she wasn't supposed to be. And I had to tell her, hey, you're not allowed here and you need to leave. And it was comical because I love my mother. And like, I love her. Like, she was you don't understand. First of all, she was my mother. Okay.
Then she was your best and
only
only
friend.
friend.
Was my best and only friend. She rooted around in my brain like no one ever has nor ever will care to again. Do you know what I mean? My mom knew me intimately, like inside and out, all how my thoughts were. She made me share everything. That was part of the abuse, was that I had no privacy. Which makes it so easy to tell y'all all this. Cause anyway, whatever. But no, and I feel like it's part of my mission almost, you know, it's something that I want to do. I want to share my experience with others because I want others to know they're not alone in their experiences. Because I got eyeballs and I can tell y'all I'll be going through it too. So anyway, my mom showed up. I had to put a boundary up, or I had put a boundary up already. She wasn't allowed to show up. And when I was trying to run her off, I just felt like I looked like a cartoon character, like Shaggy or something. Like a Shaggy from Scooby-Doo going like, get on out here. Now get on. Now go on. Now get in the car. Now get in the car. I said, get in the, it's like I was talking to
a toddler.
Like a toddler. And you know, she certainly probably is taking offense and in elaborate detail, mind you, to the exchange. But from my point of view, I was just trying to hold my boundary because it was a breach. Yeah. And I wasn't trying to cause any additional harm. But it's like when you're a nice, cuddly person who rolls over and shows your little soft belly.
Yes.
As a default, and someone tests your boundary and they know you're a soft, cuddly little roll over, show your belly kind of person. And they know that you love them.
Yes.
You have to show them that, oops, I'm sorry, but since you saw me last, I have installed razor wire.
Yes, girl.
On this here boundary.
Yes.
And you're about to get cut to shreds.
Right. And that's the thing that's so fascinating to me. And that's why I feel like our strength lies in our our community and our ability to share with each other and give and take, because and I know you and I have talked about this before, but like if my default is fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
And I got that in spades, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't need to learn any more about that. I don't need to delve any further. I just came.
You were told too.
Yeah, and I came preloaded that way. Then
So true.
it makes sense for me to learn from and observe and dig into someone who does have that rollover and show your belly energy. And Ainsley has that as well.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that is so cool to me, because it's like, not only am I observing like how that works and where you play that card or whatever,
exactly,
but I'm learning how to embody that. I'm learning how to like, oh, this is okay. You know what? I think this is a show your belly moment.
Yes.
And I know how to do it now because I have some show your belly people in my life.
I love that.
Yes.
That is
and so
beautiful.
like we're sharing our gifts with each other, and that's where the dream weaving storytelling idea comes from. It's like, because we can, the more of us that do that, like the more we can share these little cheat codes, the more we can figure out like, oh, you know what? You can fuck around and find out all day long, but that's not going to work in some situations. Right. That's not, it's like the video game thing, like you're trying to kill the dragon with a diamond and you need a sword or whatever.
Exactly.
And like, this is how you get that. Yes. This is how you get that. And that is, I feel like it is happening more now. And that's exciting. That's one of the exciting things about this game. It's like, oh, you can pair up with people and learn their skills. Yeah. And that's cool.
Well, yeah, because we've been, think about how we've been culturally herded into homogenization, right? And that's all up to Hollywood and all media, right? So we're getting clear on that. That's why, the rise of TikTok, and to a much lesser degree, Instagram, and certainly to a much lesser degree than that, Facebook, which is just really the herding facility. Yes. Facebook is just the herding facility for the homogenization.
Yeah. When you walk in there, it's like you're a cow and you're walking into one of those little stalls where they finna milk you. They finna hook you up.
Or they're just gonna numb you with the little shot to the side of the head.
Because like I tell you this almost every day when we talk. It's like, I don't listen to news or whatever. The only news that I get is, it's pretty much always tuned to NPR in my car. So it's whatever is being said before I pick a podcast or pick some music or whatever that starts playing in my car when I'm driving. And the little snippet that I got last week was like the Supreme Court hearing the, like, can states remove candidates from their ballot for president. Right. And so they were like making the arguments, and it's like, the petitioner's attorney is speaking, and then a Supreme Court justice starts to speak, and then another Supreme Court justice starts to speak. And I was like, I mean, is this our first string? Like,
thank you.
Like, why do all these people sound like they're in a bad fucking movie? And like,
because they're in a bad fucking movie that's ending.
Yeah,
that's what it is. And
yes, I mean, girl, because I was like, this is the best we got. And
listen, I used to
date motherfuckers that made us run into the iceberg.
That is it. I used to be an NPR supporter. I used to read The Economist. I'm a current Atlantic subscriber, although that's just kind of passive at this point. But I get very narrow news, right?
Yeah.
And I do that intentionally because I curate everything that comes into me. That's why I don't like commercials, because it's an invasion of my fucking peace. Do not come at me with your bullshit. That's why we don't advertise on this podcast, because we believe that if you've come into this space with us, we don't want to just be like hijacking your attention for a commercial. I think that's bullshit.
That, and like, if we do, I mean, we've had one guest so far. We had Angela, but we do anticipate when it aligns, having guests. But what we ain't finna have is guests who come on here specifically with the intention of like selling something, right? Like pitching themselves for whatever the fuck they're doing. Like, we will tag people or, give their information, and people can dig around. And if that works for you, great. And if not, that's cool too. But like, yeah, we're not going to have people coming on here trying to sell any goddamn thing because that's all we do. I feel like is consume things and be told what we should be consuming or what the fuck ever. Like it's so old. Like that's what I feel like is like as interesting as the game is, it's like also like you said ending. So it's like okay, well this is kind of played out. Like it's cool to watch how we're all kind of waking up being like, why are we playing this stupid fucking game?
Exactly.
But the game itself is like tired.
It's tired. I'll put on NPR when I'm, like showering or something and you can skip it. Like I'll ask Alexa to play it. Sorry guys, if you're playing this over your speaker and Alexa, stop.
We didn't mean to call your girl name.
And so I'll tell it to skip anything that's like political. It's 75% or 80% of the segments that they air are all politics, international or local or not local, but are
regional or whatever.
Regional.
Yeah.
I am not interested. I don't want to hear it.
I can't make myself be interested in the slightest. Because like I told you yesterday, like I don't even remember what set me off last night. Probably the fact that the reason that you get addicted to things is because it hits your little dopamine, whatever centers, oxytocin, whatever the fuck it is. You know what I'm saying? Like all of the feel good hormones. And we were just we shared with each other a TikTok where it was like the things that you find that you're addicted to are things that it's like you have to keep doing them over and over and over again because they're not satisfying.
Yes.
They don't satiate you. So like, it's like a bag of Doritos. Like you're not going to get full eating Doritos. You just want the comfort of the habitual taking this crunchy chip and putting it in my mouth and tasting this, overblown flavor.
Right.
That's weird because we shouldn't probably be eating food that tastes like a, fluorescent colored nacho cheese covered Dorito.
Yeah.
But you can't that's not going to satisfy you. So you keep doing it, waiting for, and it's the same thing with like drinking, like
exactly.
I drank excessively. And the reason that people drink excessively is because they keep waiting for that time that they're going to reconnect with how they felt that one time or that few times. You know what I mean? And so it's like you just keep drinking, waiting for that feeling to happen and it doesn't happen. So you drink more and it still doesn't happen. And now your life's a fucking mess.
Yep.
Same thing with cigarettes, Every once in a while you have that perfect cigarette where you're like, oh my God, this is what I was after. But you have to smoke hundreds of cigarettes and then you might get one of those.
Yeah.
So it's not real.
Shitty.
It's So those are the kinds of things that we do. And so I was probably, all that to say, I'm sure I was scrolling TikTok last night whenever I legit like just Googled like how can I email the White House?
Oh yeah.
And I pulled up the form and everything and I started to fill it out and then I was like, girl, not today. Also, this seems like a really poor use of your time and attention because ain't nobody fucking listening to you.
Oh no.
It was going to be like, do you guys know what's happening down here on these streets? Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, of course they do. They just don't give up.
No, they don't.
Nobody does. So it's like, that's
it's
the other, that's like the whole
themselves.
thing about like how you're playing the game, right? Because like,
right.
Like me 5 years ago, it's like, oh, let me sign up to work on your political campaign. Let me give you money towards your campaign. Let me write to my congressman. Let me email the White House. Let me, all of these things. And now it's like, well, we know none of that works.
No.
So why waste our energy? Like, let's figure out another way. Like those cheat codes are it's like when you find a coupon code and it's like, this bitch expired 6 months ago, bitch.
That is what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's like, that's exactly what that's what you were expected to do or what we were told worked. It didn't end up working. It's certainly, I don't feel like it's going to work now because it's expired. So the new thing is to build community in small organic ways. And so people who listen to this podcast and who support us on Patreon, we do have a Patreon. We're just getting it up and going. So we came out of the gate like we do. And we were like, we're going to do 50 million things a month. And we were like, oh yeah, that's
And then
hard.
Suicidal Summer was like, y'all done lost y'all goddamn minds.
She sure enough was. She was like, no ma'am.
She was like, you done made me march out of this swamp of sadness to snatch your ass up and tell you, not today, bitch. Not today.
Exactly. Well, see, and so I'm grateful to her because she knows when I'm about to go down a bad path. She says, hey, heads up,
we gonna die over this.
We gonna die over this. Let's put a boundary up, or let's ask for some concessions, which you were happy to work with me, and the folks who are supporting us, we're so grateful to you. We changed our whole model on Patreon, and really the goal for Patreon is just to be a place where you guys can show your support, which is something that we really appreciate. And it keeps this ad free, which we would keep it ad free no matter what, because it's part of our values. But it also provides an opportunity for us to give special content over there. And then our goal ultimately is to grow that into our community more globally. You know what I mean? So while we're setting up our little local chapter of Dreamweavers, where we get together and we share stories in a safe place. And if you're not local, you can host your own, and we can coordinate and support each other
and collaborate and record and hear each other's
exactly.
Yeah. So we don't, as usual, we don't have a plan per se, but
we're feeling our way through.
What you just said was our loosely defined, what we plan to do. So we're going to figure out a date, and it's going to be like soon, like within the next week or so. And like, if 4 people show up, we go with those 4 people. Like, that's the whole thing. It's like, what can I do where I am to help further what I hope this game is transitioning to.
Yeah.
So I could give my energy to worrying that we're going to have an all-out, nuclear holocaust, and so I need to email the White House about that stat.
Right.
Or I can give my energy to, these people are going to cannibalize themselves once we disconnect from the system. And so we need to build what we want to keep experiencing, which is community with one another.
Exactly.
And how can we be here for each other during the fall of this game, the fall apart part of it, the transition
fall apart
of this
part.
game. Yeah.
Because our ancestors have survived this.
Yes. And that thing,
as well.
I told you that too. Like every time I start to feel overwhelmed, every time I start to feel like I'm just drowning in the drama of it all, I'm like, people lived through, the Crusades and Inquisitions and 2 world wars and
plagues,
the Great Depression and, plagues and shit. It's like, this is not new. It's just like the way we're experiencing it is new to us. But like our souls have done this before and have been here before. And I think that as we move from unconsciously experiencing this world to consciously experiencing it, and that's how we have the vantage point that like, oh, we've done this before. Like that's the part of us I feel like we need to tap into so that we can be like, oh, how do we reconnect with each other? Because that's lacking. How do we reconnect with resources and other life forms that we share this planet with, and not just be consumers? Like, we're just like a big ass fucking batch of locusts that's gotten out of control.
Cancer. I mean, humanity under the control of capitalism is very cancerous to this world, and none of us are having a fucking good time, guys. Just be honest. It's really scrappy out here, and that's true. And then I also told you yesterday how I'm actually starting to like my job, which is
and I love that.
It's a paradox, it's a paradox, but I
feel like the single biggest win that we can have right now, and if we don't already have it, this is what we can focus on cultivating, is the ability to hold paradox.
Yeah.
If we can just get out of that's how you exit the matrix, is like, you just say like, well, these things are not mutually exclusive. They're just not, like they can, so many things can be true at the same time.
That's right.
And if you can shift your awareness from that either or, to both and, like, that's the trick. That's the hack.
That's the hack. Exactly. Well, I think maybe this is a good place for us to end
Yes,
this one.
girl.
And yeah.
I'm super happy to be back in studio with you. Can I just tell you, I keep looking at you like, girl, so happy to be here.
Me too. I'm so glad to be back.
Well, we love y'all. Bye.
Love you. Bye.